Our dear Peter wants to cook a pizza, but he has no ingredients in his home. So he grabs his laptop and wills to visit an online grocery store for buying some groceries. So let's say he opens his favorite browser, of course it is Brave, and then he goes to walmart.com. And as he needs some groceries, he goes to the grocery section and a page appears in front of Peter. So this page that Peter can see all the colors, the fonts, the views, this whole is called the front end part of the website. But how come Peter can see this? Firstly, let us give a closer attention to the URL. It says walmart.com/cp/groceries and slash some random number. So does this look familiar to you? I hope so, because if we look at our file system of our operating system, that may be Windows, Mac or Linux, like if I visit new volume E, then I visit to games, then GTA 5, then if I click here, it gives a link or a path, and this path take me to this page. How can I be so much sure? If I copy that and if I create a new tab and paste it here and press enter, it will take me to the same page. So exactly in the same system, the URL of the websites also work. When someone writes this URL, it will take him to the same page. But the things that he can see, these all are the part of the front end. But there is a catch, that is, there are some products here. Each product has some name, some price given, some descriptions, how many people bought it, and some ratings. So what this data are stored, and how can the web page access the data? Obviously, the data changes frequently, and they are not written statically with the HTML and CSS. They are somehow stored in some kind of database. So let's see how, if I write this URL, I can get access of this page, or any user can get access of this page, and how this page gets the data of these products. So firstly, we have to know the concept of server and database. So database, you can think of it as a PC. It's a computer and that has a huge storage. Okay, and anyone can access that computer with some kinds of URL. That means the owner of the database will provide us some URL, and by that URL, we will be able to contact with the database. And what is a server? The meaning of server is associated with the name itself, that is, which serves. Now, what does a server serve? We'll see that, but firstly, another thing that we have to know, that is, every server has an unique ID. In the language of programming, that is called the domain of the server. So in this case, the server has the domain of walmart.com. Like we know google.com. So this is a domain. Domain means that is a unique ID, and it is associated with some kinds of IP address. But as we cannot remember so many IP addresses of so many websites, so for that reason, a domain name is associated with these IP addresses, and this system is called DNS. So every server is assigned an IP address, and as the users cannot remember so many IP addresses, a domain name is assigned with some IP address. So let's say this server has the domain walmart.com. What does this domain refer to? That means if any people from anywhere of the world visits walmart.com, they can access the server of Walmart. And what happened in case of Peter? He visited some URL walmart.com slash something, that was groceries maybe. So when he wrote this domain to his laptop, then through his laptop and through his internet system router, this goes to the internet and finds where Walmart.com is located. So it finds the Walmart.com server and it requests the server that I need the groceries page. In this case, this page of the website. So the server accepts the request and it sends the front end part, that means HTML, CSS and JavaScript of the website to the client who requested the website or requested that particular page. Okay, so that's how what server did here, it served the page. So it served the front end part. But there is a problem. When the server give us the front end part, in that page there were some products. Here you saw there are some products that are shown in the page. And here we can see the server is sending HTML, CSS and JavaScript. So this page, the framework of the page that is made using HTML, CSS and JavaScript. But the data of the products, that means let's say there is sugar, corn and oil. These products has some price, some rating. So each product have some price, some rating and some other informations. And this data, these are not immediately shown. Like we all have faced that when we visit some website, then it loads for some time. There is a spinner that spins for some time. That means only we can see some empty boxes, but no data inside that. Because at that time, the data are not still fetched from the database where the data are stored. So where the data are stored, we all see the data is stored in some kind of database. Let's say for this case, in this database, the data of the products, okay, for the data of this products is stored in that database. But there is a problem, that is we cannot access the database from the front end side. So we cannot access the data from the front end side. But from the front end, what we can access, that we can access the backend or the server, and the server can access the database. Yes, in some cases we can access the data from the front end side, that is for server side rendered pages. I am not going to those discussions now because those are some complex things. Let us assume that we cannot access the database from the front end side. So what the web page will do, that it will request the backend to get the data, and the backend will get the data from the database. So the data from the database, the data is sent to backend, and from backend the data are sent to front end, and then those data are shown in those cards in the front end side. So this is how the whole system works. So what is in the backend and how we contact with backend from the front end side? So as we told that the front end is made using HTML, CSS and JavaScript. And why JavaScript is used? It is used for writing the logical parts or the logics in the website. So inside JavaScript, there is a logic written, that is when we visit this URL. Okay, so when we visited this URL, we were served with this web page, isn't it? So in this web page, in the JavaScript section, a logic is written, that is when we are in this page, then we will put a request, fetch. Fetch is similar to get. Okay, so we'll put a request here to the backend. Okay, what will be the request for? For getting those data that I want to show, in the current web page. to request the backend, we must put a URL here by which we will contact with the backend. Okay, so what will be the URL of the backend? Here we can see the front end and backend, they both are in the same server, the domain of which is walmart.com. Okay, but not always this will be the case, because sometimes the front end will be in one server, the backend will be in another server. In that case, the URL will be different. But in this case, as the domain or the URL is same, so how will I differentiate between the URL of front end and backend? When the front end part of the website that will put a request to backend from some data for some data, then within the URL, the first part, that means the domain will be same, walmart.com. But in case of frontend, when we got the HTML, CSS and JavaScript from the server, then we only wrote /groceries. But now, as we want to request to backend, so now there will be an extra part, that is /API /groceries. Is it necessary to write API only? Actually, no, you can write anything here, but that will be different from this URL. Okay, so actually to differentiate between the URL of the front end and the URL of the back end, we are writing API. It is a convention that is used actually for writing URLs of the back end. This URL, this is actually path to the back end, and this was path to the front end. So when I wrote this, the server gave me front end part. When I am writing this, this is going to back end part, and this will send me something from the back end. So what will it send? So in the back end, there is some logic written. Okay, in this case, we are using Node.js. There are some other technologies also by that we can write backend code, like Django, Fast API, PHP, and many other things. But in this case, we are using Node.js. Okay, all the techniques are same in each of the programming languages. Actually, the languages doesn't matter. You need to understand the concept and the structure, how to write code. Okay, and the logic, how to actually build the logic and how things actually works out. So what is written in backend? That is, when someone requests to API slash groceries, when someone requests to API slash groceries, in that case, a function will be invoked. And what is written inside that function? Inside that function, actually, three things are done. That is, contact to DB. That means firstly we contact with the database, then we get data from the database, and then we send the data to front end. So only these three things are done. In case of groceries, we will contact the database to send the groceries data. But if the path was /API / let's say medicine, in that case, we would ask the database to send the data of the medicine, and will send the medicine, like if I requested a page of medicine, okay, in Walmart, then it would send me a front end containing HTML, CSS and JavaScript of medicines, but the data will not be still shown in the page. So in the JavaScript section of that page, there will be a fetch request to /API /medicines, and it will go to the backend and see to which part of the backend the request is being done. So it will see that it is not groceries, it is to /medicine. So it will go inside the function of the medicine, and it will see that here from DB the medicine are fetched, and it will be sent to the front end. in this course we will learn this part, only this part, that is how to write a function, how to contact with the database, how to get the data from the database, and how to send it to front end. Okay, so this part that is known as the backend development. And another thing that is, we all have heard about API. Like if you are connected to any developer community, then you have obviously heard of API. So what is API? This part, this is the API. Okay, that means the URL that contacts with backend. What I told, that this URL will contact with the backend, and this URL contacted with the front end side. So the front end part and back end part both are deployed in a server. What is a server? Server is actually a running PC that is always running until it crashes for a heavy load, or some bugs are found in the code of the backend or inside of the front end. Okay, so let's wrap the things up and let's see actually what was happening here. So there is a developer who developed the website. Generally, not a single developer develops a full website. There are a lot of developers works. Someone works on the front end side, someone works on the back end side. And after the development, they put the website on a server. Server is a PC, the PC that is always running. Okay. And some people like Peter wants to visit the website. So he writes the links on the browser of his laptop, then through the internet, it finds the server where the walmart.com domain is situated, and it requests the server that I want the groceries page of walmart.com website. And another thing that happens here, it actually firstly checks the URL, that if there is any part that contains slash API, then it forwards the URL to the backend side. And if there is nothing that contains slash API, then it directly goes to the front end, and then server sends the response back. That means the HTML, CSS, and JavaScript of this page, okay, slash groceries. That was the page. Okay, it sends this page back to the client who is asking for it. But there was the problem I told about before, that is, when the server sends back the website, then only we can see some empty boxes, not the data, because the data are in some kind of database, and to get the data we have to firstly request the backend, because from the client side we cannot directly access the database. So what we do, we request the backend using a URL, and that URL includes slash API slash groceries. Okay, so this URL, this is written in the JavaScript section of this web page. When we code the web page in HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, or maybe in React, Svelte, or any other framework, then in this page we write a fetch request, and we give this URL. So by this URL, we actually are requesting the backend that we need the data about the groceries. Then in the backend, there are some logic written here. It contacts with the database and it asks for the groceries data. The database sends the data back to the backend, and finally, backend sends all the data to the front end. And then these boxes which are empty or a loading was shown, now the boxes are filled with data, and we can actually finally view the full web page or full loaded web page with data. And in backend development, what we will do is we will build these APIs. Okay, that means we will write the logic that when a user visits this page, then in that page there will be a request written using JavaScript, or if anybody are using any other languages, then the request will be written in that language. But there will be, obviously there will be a URL, and that URL will request to the backend. Then in backend, when this URL is invoked by opening this page, then the URL goes to backend, and in backend there is a code written. The code seems like this, that is a API route. This is called route, and a function corresponding with it. Okay. So What this refers? This refers that when somebody hits this URL path, that means when the URL contains this path, then this function will be invoked. And what this function does, this context to DB, then it gets the data from DB. Then if any modification needed, any modification is done with the data. And finally, it sends the response back to frontend. So only this is our job. Okay, this is the job of a backend developer, to write an API route by which if any front-end developer wants to access data, then he will invoke that API route or call that API route and he can get data. So this part is done by backend developer, and this part that is written by the front-end developer. So that is written in the front end and that is in the backend side. So this was all about the concept. Now let us see what we did with a practical example. Here I have created a simple server using Node and Express. So you don't need to bother about what these are. I will explain those to you later on. Here are some mock data about some groceries. Each of the groceries has an ID, a name, and price. And there are some mock data about some medicines. Each of the medicines has an ID, a name, and a price. Now there are two API routes. That means when from the front end, any data about groceries will be requested that I told you before. That is, here you can see this part, this was written in the front end part, and from the front end, this page was asking for groceries data. Here you can see I have written a demo index.html file, and there is a button. When I click on the button, it will invoke the fetch data function, and what the fetch data function do, that is, it fetches the data from the groceries. Also, it fetches the data from the medicine. So let us comment this out. Now what will happen, that is, when I click on fetch data, then this function is invoked, and inside the function there is a fetch request to the backend. And why I have written this URL, http localhost 3000/groceries, because when I will run the server, let's run the server using Node, the name of the file, that is server.js. So server.js. Now you can see a link is given. The server is running on this link, http:/localhost/3000. So now this is the domain of this server. In our case, in case of Peter, the domain was walmart.com. So we wrote walmart.com/groceries. Now, in our case, that is not walmart.com, that is our local PC, this local PC. So the domain of the local PC is localhost, and we fixed a port here. I have fixed a port that is 3000. You can assume or you can fix any other port other than 3000 if you want, like 5000, 8000. Okay, there are some free ports that you can actually dedicate it to your server. So as the server is running on localhost 3000, so we have to give this link, http localhost 3000 and /groceries. So what will this do? This will directly request to this server, and it will come to this server, and the code is running. Now when the code has reached to this line, then it will see that the API that the frontend requested with this URL contains /groceries. So this part of the code will be executed. What will this do? This will invoke this function. As I have shown you before, the API route had two parts. One is the route itself and another is a function. When the requested URL from the front end contains this route, then this function will be executed. Similarly, if I didn't commented this out, if this URL was also requested from the front end, Then after reaching the next line, here we can see that this route is named /medicine, and this URL request contains /medicine within it. So this route will be invoked, or this function will be invoked for this fetch request. So for this fetch request, this route will be invoked, and for this route will be invoked. And what does the function inside the route do? It is simply sending the response back, and it is actually converting the groceries. Here are the groceries. uh, I have statically written them here, but in actual case this will be in the database. We'll see that in the later part, how to actually contact with database and get the data from the database. And then what it is doing, it is sending the response back by converting it to JSON to the front end. And here the grocery response, it actually contains this response in JSON format. Okay, then we are parsing the JSON here, and then we are simply showing it in a list. Now if I run this with live server, this is the demo HTML frontend. If I click on fetch data, we can see the data shown here. So this data, these are not defined in my HTML statically. These are in the backend, and in real life this will be stored on some database. And from the front end, we will request for the data, then it will go to the backend and it will see which API route has been requested, then that route with which this URL matches, the last part of the URL matches, the function inside that route will be invoked, and inside that function there are some modification with the data, and finally the data will be sent to the front end. And inside front end here, we will declare some variable. By that we will catch the data, then we will show this using HTML, or if you are using React you can show that in any components. So that is all about the backend development. That is the primary concept. Now we'll move to real environment setup and what we need to install for starting with backend development. What are the things we need to learn? How much will we learn in this course? What are the databases we are going to learn? And what are the other technologies that we are going to learn in this course? We will see them now. The only thing you need to install to get started with is Node.js. Search on your PC terminal and check if Node.js is installed or not on your PC. So for Windows, search node version, and if it gives some gibberish things like this, then Node is not installed in your PC. And if it shows some version, then Node is installed on your PC. You don't need to install it again. So how to install Node.js? Firstly, go to your favorite browser, then search for Node.js. Click on the first website. Click on Windows installer.msi. It will start downloading. I have already downloaded, so I'll skip this. Now open the file. Click on next. Accept the agreement. Next, next, next. You can click here to automatically install the necessary tools. I will not check this, and install. Click on finish. Now again search terminal. If you are using Windows 10, then you can use command prompt or Windows PowerShell from here. You can use command prompt, or you can also use PowerShell. And if you are using Windows 11, then you can use this terminal. Now write node version. Now you can see the 22.13 version of Node.js is installed on your PC. Now you're ready to go with. And for writing the code, obviously you need to have a code editor installed on your PC. I hope every one of you who are starting to learn backend development obviously you have learned something of JavaScript or any other languages, and for that obviously you have installed any code editors like VS Code or Sublime Text, any of your choice. And if not, then just go to the browser, search for VS Code, and go to the first website, and here click download for Windows, or if you want to install it for Mac or Linux, then you can search it on web how to install that. So we have installed Node.js, but what actually is this Node.js? We know for making a website we need HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Now we can say we can also make it by React or Vue. But ultimately, what these frameworks use or libraries use, that is, they use a bundler. Like for React, it uses Vite as a bundler. And what Vite does is it combines the React code and converts it to pure HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Because our browser, this actually understand nothing without HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. And JavaScript, if you look at the language name, JavaScript, it is a scripting language. And this language, this was created to run on browsers. So JavaScript run on browsers. If we want that we will write our backend code using JavaScript, then we will need a runtime environment for JavaScript. So for that we need Node.js. So for that reason we installed Node.js on our computer. So JavaScript runs on browser, but developers thought that what if we create the backend server, or what if we code the server using JavaScript? So for that reason we need to install Node.js on our PC. Then we can actually write JavaScript code on our PC and we can run JavaScript on our computer. And Node.js allows us to run JavaScript instead of the browser. Why we are using Node.js? Because Node.js, it uses JavaScript, and by JavaScript we can both code the front end and also the backend of any website. And it is very much fast due to the V8 engine, and also it can handle multiple requests simultaneously. It can handle multiple requests. And another thing that we are going to use, that is Express.js. So what is Express.js? It is a backend framework. So it is a framework for Node.js. And it helps in handling routes, then requests, and also middlewares. What are this? No need to be worried about this, because I will explain about this later on. And why we are not using raw node, why we are using a framework? Because Express allows us to simplify the backend development, and it has the middleware support and the routing system management. If we were using raw node, then we had to write a lot of boilerplate code, and Express is letting us to actually keep the codes cleaner, and also we can start with less boilerplate. So let us get started with a sample Node.js and Express server. Create a new folder, name this whatever you want. Now open this folder using VS Code. You can right click here and open in terminal. Then using terminal also you can open it with VS Code, and also you can click here and write cmd, and here you can see we are in the backend course directory. but I want to move inside Express demo and I want to open this with VS Code. So what I have to do is I have to change the directory. So change directory cd express demo. Now you can see we are inside Express demo. Now simply write code dot. There is a space. Now we can open it with VS Code. Press Command J for opening a terminal. Also you can open terminal from here, new terminal. Now we will initialize a Node.js project. So for that reason we have to write npm init space -y. So npm is Node package manager. By this we can install any packages of Node.js on Node, and init is initialization and -y means yes for everything. And what is actually npm? Like if you have used Python, it is similar to pip. Now press enter. Okay, you can see a package.json file has been created. What is the purpose of this file? I will explain it to you later. Now we will install Express for our project. Npm install Express. You can see another file named package.log.json and a node modules folder has been created. This node modules, it contains all the necessary dependencies and other things that are required for our project. And package.json, it has a dependency object. So it refers to the dependencies or the modules that I have installed for this project. So just as I have installed Express, it is there. But if you rewind a little bit, you will see that there was nothing in dependencies. Now create an entry point for our project, name it as index.js. In this file, we will write all codes. So to get started with, firstly we have to import Express. So import Express from Express. Then we have to instantiate Express. That is, we will create an instant of the Express application. So let's name it app equal to Express. This app is now our server and we will use it to define routes and listen to requests and also respond to them. So this is the most vital part. Now we will define a port. So const port equal to 5000. Someone also assigns port 8000 or 3000 to this, but conventionally for front end 3000 ports are assigned, so I like to assign it 5000. Now let us create a route. App.get, this is a get request and it will listen to home route, and the function receives a request and a response as its parameters, and it sends a response back. Respond.send hello world. Why I am writing get here? Actually, in backend development, there are 4 kinds of requests. That is get, post, put or patch, and delete. So these 4 kinds of requests are there. So this is database. If we want to get anything from database, we use get. If we want to save anything to the database, we use post. And if we want to modify something, modify or update anything to the database, then we use put or patch. And if we want to remove something from the database, that is delete. In this case, we are using get, though it is not connected with any database. But what get will do here, that is when someone requests something to this route, it will send him something. That means the person who is requesting, he will get something. For this I have written get here. Then the final thing that we have to do, that is we have to listen to a port. We have defined a port, now we have to listen to that port. So app.listen, we have to pass the port as the parameter and a function, that is a callback function, and we can console log here server running a port. So this is our basic setup for an Express server. And what is a port actually? Port is, for every device or computers, there is a specific channel by which the communication is done with some server or some other resources. Now we'll start the server. So write node index.js, and here we have got an error. So what does the error say? It says, warning, to load an ES module, set type module in the package.json. So here we have used ES module. So for that reason, we have to go to the package.json, and here we have to just put one thing, that is this. So you can see every error you get, you just need to read it and you will get the answer here. Write it here, put a comma, you are done. Now again, let's try node index.js. The server is started. Now go to any browser and write localhost slash 5000, and you can see hello world. So congratulations on writing your first backend code. So how we are able to see hello world here? Because in the code here we have sent hello world as a string, and from here not only string, we can send any kind of data, any kind of JSON data, or we can also send static HTMLs and etc. So if we change like hello JavaScript, and if we save it, and if we go to the server, and if we refresh the page, we can see that the changes are still not seen. We can see it's still not changed. But why? Because we have to again start the server for the recent changes. So stop the server using Ctrl+C, then again press node index.js. Now if we go and if we refresh, we can see hello JavaScript. Now you may feel that it is a hassle to again closing the server and again starting the server for slight changes. So for that reason, we will install a package named NodeMon. So stop the server, install NodeMon using npm install NodeMon. Now start the server using NodeMon index.js. Now if you change something here like hello node and press Ctrl S and just refresh here, you can see the change is made, and you can see it is automatically restarted. NodeMon restarting due to changes, and NodeMon starting node index.js. So it is again starting the server. So we don't need to manually start and stop the server again and again. Okay. So if till now nothing has made sense to you, don't worry. I'm explaining this more clearly again. So let us create a demo frontend. And if you don't know HTML, CSS and JavaScript, no need to be worried about. You don't need to understand those. I will just show you how we fetch data or how we put request in the front-end side and how we send the data from the backend to the front-end. Let's create a new folder, name it demo frontend. Now open this folder in VS Code. Now create an index.html file and you can press the exclamation and press enter. You will get the boilerplate for starting with your HTML. Now inside the body, create a header tag, name it connect frontend and backend. Then create a paragraph tag, put it empty, because in this paragraph we will not statically define anything, like we will not write something here. Okay, in this paragraph we will send some dynamic data from the backend side. Let's say hello world. We will send this from the backend to the frontend and create another tag. Let's name it products list, and for showing the products we'll create an unordered list and give this also an ID. So let's say this ID is message, this ID is product list. Now if I open it with live server, we can see we can only here see the header tag but nothing inside them. So now let us modify our backend accordingly. As I told you before, for writing the API routes, for writing this route, conventionally we use /API /the route name. But in our case we didn't follow it, so let us rename it to /API/ let's say message. Now if I start the server, nodemon, we can see the server is started on localhost 5000. Copy this, or you can write here localhost 5000. Now you can see on the this is the home, this was the home route. Okay, this was this home route. So in this home route there is nothing. There is nothing in our code in home route /home. Previously in the home route there was hello world, but now in the home route there is nothing. So for that reason we are getting an error here, that is cannot get. But if I write /API/ message and press enter, now you can see hello world. Now you can see the message. So the route you define here, you have to must go to that route to see the data of that route, or whatever the route is sending, whatever the function inside that route returning you. Similarly, if I create another route, app.get now /API/ let's say products, and there will be a callback function as a parameter, request response. Now let us send a response dot send, let's say products. But where are the products? We haven't defined it yet. In real life case, this will be the products will be fetched from database. Okay, so this will be collected from database, but as for now we still haven't connected database yet. So let us create some dummy data here. Const products equal to, let's say ID 1, then give a price 40, ID 2, name, so we have defined our demo products. Now we are just sending them to where? to the person who has requested us with this URL. This may be requested from the front end, or also we can, as we saw before, we can request the URL from our browser and also we can see them. Like for this, if I write here /API, what was the route name? The route name was /API/products. So cut message and write products. Now you can see the products here, and you may not see this so much beautifully indented because I have installed a extension. The name was something like JSON viewer. Here, this is the extension JSON viewer. If you install this, then you will be able to see the data in a well indented format. So our backend is working. Now we have to fetch, or we have to put a request to the backend for getting the data, and we'll show this two data in this list. Okay, so for that reason, for putting a request, we need JavaScript. Let us create a script file, script.js. So let us firstly find this element, find this paragraph tag by ID. So name this const message element equal to document dot get element by ID, give the ID message. This ID is this ID. We have created this element, and if you don't have any interest about this part, this front end part, how we can fetch data, then you can skip this part. This is I am only showing you to visualize how front end and back end are connected together, how we put request to the backend from the front end side, and how the backend send the data to the front end, and how a front end developer he shows the data in his website or in his front end. Now we'll create the request. So what is the method of writing it? We write fetch, then inside fetch we have to give a URL that I have shown you just before, like this URL. So what was the URL for our backend? That is localhost colon 5000, but you have to must put HTTP in the front. So if you paste here, by copying from the browser, you will see that HTTP is automatically put in front of this. So this is not products. Firstly, we will fetch the message data. So /API/message dot, then we will receive a response. We'll get the response, then convert the response into a JavaScript object, JSON. JSON means JavaScript object notation. Dot, then after converting it, then we'll get the data. Now what we want to do with the data? We want to set the inner text of this message element. This was the message element, this paragraph tag, this paragraph element. So we want to set the text of this, the inner text, to the data that we are getting from the backend. So what we will write here? Message element dot inner text equal to data. Now save this file, go to the HTML that we started with live server, refresh this. Now save this file and go to your browser where you are running the HTML file and refresh this. Oops, I think we did some mistake. We didn't added the script tag here. So we haven't connected this script file with this HTML. How to connect that? Just put a script tag, script, then give a source, name this as this name, script.js, and whatever you name this, you have to put that name here, script.js. Now go to the browser, refresh. Okay, we still cannot see. If we go to inspect, then console, then you will see an error here, that is access to fetch at localhost 5000 /API/message That means we are attempting to fetch some data from this URL from origin this. This is the URL of the front end, and here you can see the port is 5500. So that means our server is running in this URL. This URL, our server is running, but our front end is running in another URL. So for that reason, we are getting an error, that is access control allow origin, or CORS error. CORS means cross origin resources policy. That means from one URL we cannot request or get data from another URL. That means the front end, if that is on another URL, and the backend that is on other URL, then we cannot make a direct communication between the front end and backend. Then how the things work actually? So for that reason, we have to install a package that is named CORS. So close the server, pressing Ctrl plus C. Now let us install CORS. npm install. After installing it, let us start the server again. And here, before everything, we have to use the CORS. So how to use CORS? App dot use. Then we will use CORS, but before that we have to import CORS. Import CORS from CORS. Now we can use CORS. Generally we have to put some configuration inside this CORS, but for now I don't want to make it so much complex. We have to just use it like that and save it. Now go to your front end, refresh the page, and we are getting another error, that is unexpected token age hello world is not a valid JSON, because here we are sending hello world directly as a string, but normally we should not send this directly like this. We should convert it as a JSON, or we should send this as JSON. How to send as a JSON file? Just simply without response.send, write response.json. And this is not actually an object. Create it like an object, cut it, then put an object here, then give a name, let's say message, then paste it here. Now this is a valid JSON. Now we are sending this JSON object to the front end, and then we are parsing the JSON here, and then we are getting the data. But this data contains this whole object. But here what this data contains? This data equal to an object, and inside the object there is a name message which contains the hello world string. So we cannot directly set message element dot inner text equal to data, because we cannot assign an object element as a text. So we have to extract the message inside this. So data dot message. Now save this. I hope now this works. Yes, we can see this works now. In the same manner, we can also get the products from the backend and we can show it here. So let us see how to do that. As we are using the JSON format, so for sending the products, we will also convert it to JSON and send it. Save this file. Then come here. Now we will fetch the products. Now firstly create the element for this product list. Copy this ID. Then create the element. Const product element equal to document dot get element by id, paste that id that you copied. Now we have got the product element, that unordered list. Okay, so inside this unordered list we will show this products. So firstly we have to fetch again, fetch like this, copy this, paste it here, but here the URL will be different because we are now fetching the products. If we give this URL, then it would bring us this message, but we want products. So for that reason we use this URL. Now put dot then. After resolving the promise, we get the response, convert it to object JSON. Then we will get the data. What is the data? This data is this products data. Now this is an array. The array has two products. In real life it will be millions of products. So how will we show this inside this products element? We'll simply run a loop inside this array, then each loop will be shown in a list item or li. So data dot for each, we will get a simple product for each data. That means inside products we are running the loop, we will get a single product for each item. If I write without data, press Ctrl D, then you can write products. Now it makes more sense. So products dot for each product we will get a single product. Then we will create a list item, document dot create element. What we are creating? We are creating a list item. Then list item dot text content. That means what will be the text content of the list item? That will be give back text. Then product dot id, and let's say product dot name. Then we will just have to append this to our product element, this product element. So we will append every list item. After creating the list item, we will append this in our product element. So product element dot append child, this li that we created, this li. So what is happening actually here? Let me wrap this up. We are putting a fetch request. That means we are requesting the backend that we need some data. And what data we need? We need the data about the products. For that reason, after the backend URL localhost 5000, we have written /API/products. So when backend will receive this request, this will try to match that with which route this matches. So with /API/message, this doesn't match, but this matches with /API/products. So it goes inside this /API/products. It has a callback function. So it goes to the function, and what the function do? The function returns the JSON of the products, the mock products that I created. Now after receiving the product dot then meaning, I have received the response. So the response contains a JSON. It is parsing the JSON. Then we are getting the products data. And the products is an array. We are running a loop inside the array. So products dot for each we are getting a product element, and we are creating an element, HTML element, a list item, because here the product list is an unordered list. We will show each of these products in a list item inside this UL. Inside this UL we will show each of these products. Now we are creating the li list item. Then we are setting the text content of the list item to the products that I have got by fetching it from the backend. So that product dot id, that means this id, and product dot name. Then we are just simply appending this to the product element. And what is the product element? This is this UL, because this has id product list, and we grabbed the element by the id. So we are appending this to the product element, or we are appending this li to the product element. Now if I go to the browser, we can see the products list. So that's how we connect the front end and the back end. But this was a small front end. We didn't need so much data. So for that reason, the backend code is also too small. But if you understand this, what we are doing here, then you will understand everything in the latter part of the course, because only these concepts are necessary to learn. And in the latter part of the course, we will do some big projects. We'll make some big backends. And if you practice those regularly, I hope you will become a good backend developer.